Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lurking for Legends, a live video cast where my awesome co-host, epic fantasy author Richard H. Stevens, and I speak with people from all walks of the publishing industry. Lurking for Legends is a live interactive broadcast, and we encourage viewers to chime in with questions for our guests or simply make comments on what they hear in the show. So tonight we have David M. Kelly, sci-fi author and book cover artist. Yes, he makes all of those amazing covers on his own from scratch. Really, I mean, that amazes me. So welcome, David. How are you tonight?
I'm great, thank you, Christy. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And you've got a number of books and short stories out there for us to talk about too. So tell us, just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you write in general.
I'm a displaced person, originally from England. I now live in Canada. They kicked me out of England, so I kind of had to find some place, Basically, I write sci-fi, which most of it is kind of hard sci-fi. Sorry, my ear police is bothering me. I'm not used to wearing this. So yeah, I usually write hard sci-fi with plausible science, although my last novel, Hyperia Jones, was completely non-realistic science. It was just completely goofy, sort of fun, which was just for me to have a change. And usually the kind of fast-paced, lots of action, and up to now at least kind of relatively near future. They're all set about 150 years in the future, sort of thing. So it's not kind of way off in the sort of very distant kind of like future times.
Cool. And of course, like when something is close enough, science-wise or futuristic-wise, it's all the more interesting to me, at least, because I can kind of foresee that stuff happening and look at how it might happen. And I really enjoy that kind of stuff a lot. That's some of my favorite kind of sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the reason why I kind of decided to go that way, because I wanted people to still be able to kind of like relate to it and understand kind of things that were going on and how they kind of relate to what we're seeing around us in the world today, sort of thing. The whole plan is really it's a big kind of like giant universe which will develop over time and go more and more into the future with different characters and different books and different series. So yeah, I will get there, but it will take quite a few books.
So before we get into the series, the Joe Ballen series, and the Logan spin-off series that's coming off that, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Hyperia Jones and the Olive Branch Caper? Because that is, like you were mentioning, a total takeoff from what you normally write. It's kind of like a fun, futuristic wrestling novel, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah, I'd kind of done two novels back to back, which were quite sort of serious and quite emotional for me. The third Joe Ballen book, and then the first of the Logan series. And I really just wanted something that was a complete break, that I didn't really have to kind of like get quite so emotionally involved with. And I came up with this idea for this character, Hyperia Jones, and she's basically a septopoid. So she's like kind of like, she's a humanoid, but derived from kind of like an octopus type creature. So she's got sort of like tentacles on her head and all this kind of stuff. And basically, during the day, she's a pro wrestler in this kind of three-dimensional wrestling kind of league. And then at night, secretly, she's a jewel thief and goes around stealing jewels to order. And I just kind of like thought that was just such a kind of like a weird sort of like wacky idea, and I just thought I've got to run with that. And so that's how it came about, and I wrote the first book. So yeah, that was how it came out. Oops, lost it again.
So
this is going to plague me all night.
Have you got a sequel plan for the Hyperia Jones? Is that one just a fun one-off?
No, there will be. I've actually, while I was editing it, I came up with so many ideas for future stories with that character. I've probably kind of like already outlined probably about 6 or 7 different books that I could do with that character or that group of characters. So So
our favorite CJ has commented, "Hi CJ," and she says the great ideas in your books must be a lot of research.
For Hyperia Jones, no.
So that was totally just you having fun. Like there wasn't even research involved in that one.
No, I just kind of literally winged the whole book. It's like I didn't stop, kind of like even to take a breath really. The Joe Ballen series and the Logan series, they're very much kind of like, as far as I can, based them kind of like in reality and in sort of like real physics and real science. And so there's a lot of this associated research with those. It's like sometimes I'll research things for, kind of like a few hours, and that translates into a book, and it might be just kind of like 2 words, so, but it's the right words. That's the point, sort of thing. So yeah, there is a lot involved with those.
Yeah, I can imagine, because like it's the same kind of thing with historical fiction, as you do all that research for just a couple of words. So I totally relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
CJ also says, "I love the background image." Did you do that one as well, the one in the background? And she says, "Do you do your own designs?" We know you do your own designs. You mentioned that they look fantastic, but I imagine there's a lot of work that goes into your covers.
Yeah, I'm not very quick when it comes to that kind of stuff, and certainly I was very, very slow on the first couple I tried to do, and there are multiple versions that will never see the light of day because they were so horribly bad. But yeah, I have up to now done all of the covers on all of my books, and like the ships and everything. It's all my own designs. Many, many years ago in a past life, I worked for a games company. And at that time, when you worked for a games company, you kind of did a bit of everything. It wasn't like now where it's kind of like all specialized. You did like programming, you'd do some graphics and so on. And so I picked up some 3D modeling skills with that. And so when I came to doing the first cover for well, it was actually my short story collection. I kind of I looked around and I saw the price of covers, and I thought, well, I'll see if I can avoid paying that because I don't want to sound cheap. And so I thought, well, I'll see what I can do, and if I'm happy with it, it's like I'll go with it. If I'm not, I can just get somebody else's design, And as it turned out, I kind of thought, yeah, I'm kind of okay with that. And I've been kind of managing ever since. I kind of always sort of wonder if it's going to get to a point where I think I just can't manage the cover for this book. But so far, I've kind of managed to carry on doing them.
I kind of can't imagine what you couldn't handle, because what you do with not only the space background and the ships, the details in the ships is sort of expecting you to say something about, I should take an overlay or something from somewhere else. But I mean, that is a lot of detail work. I can't even imagine. That's a lot of patience too. A lot of patience to do that.
It is. It's very, 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 very detail oriented, and it is a lot of work to build up all that detail. I've learned some shortcuts kind of more recently, which help, but it's still a lot of work for sure. And that's why I don't kind of offer myself as services for doing that, because with writing and everything and doing my own, I just don't have the time to actually kind of put that work into kind of do covers for somebody else.
Can imagine. Yeah, that would be quite a lot to do. I mean, just creating some kind of short story cover for me, not doing sci-fi and not doing it from scratch or anything, is that's enough time for me. And you're doing all of that from scratch, so I can imagine that would be a full-time job if you did it for other people.
For sure, sure, it would have to be.
Yeah, I use a DAZ rendering program, and that takes a while, and that's all done for me. I just have to throw the images in there and kind of manipulate them a little bit, and then hit render, and wait for my computer to render them, which takes a while sometimes. But you do everything from scratch, so I couldn't imagine doing that. So it looks like CJ's got another question here, and this is something I wanted to ask you as well. Is she says your ideas are awesome. She said, what made you want to write in the sci-fi genre in the first place? Was it a certain author?
That really kind of came about originally with the Apollo moon landing. When I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to specify my age, but when I was a kid, it's like I saw the first moon landing.
That narrows it down pretty good then.
And I was so kind of like transfixed by that event. Like my parents allowed me to stay up late, especially to see it and everything. And that kind of like made me really sort of love sort of science and space. And I mean, I was space crazy sort of thing. And that led me kind of like into sort of things like science and technology in terms of my education and so on. And almost kind of like naturally, I started reading science fiction, you know, which is kind of like science but fictionalized. So, and so I read an awful lot of science fiction when I was younger. I read almost everything by people like Asimov, Heinlein, and Clark, another one. And so that kind of like was what I really liked reading about. And so when I decided to start writing, it was just like, it seemed like the natural thing to go with, you know, was like science fiction. That was really what I wanted to do. I tried to make the stories themselves almost so that they could be in any setting in terms of the story and the characters. But I like the fact that they're in that science fiction background, which kind of like puts characters in situations that really are very different to what we kind of like normally know. And so I say it was kind of like this earpiece. I'm telling you, it's driving me nuts. So yeah, it just seemed as the natural genre from everything that I liked reading. I was a big Star Trek fan as well. You know, before Star Wars.
We'll get into that in a little bit. But
yeah, science fiction.
I've read the Joe Ballen series and I loved it. I've read the first book in the Logan series, and the Joe Ballen series is really neat because it starts in Baltimore, futuristic Baltimore, and Baltimore is pretty well mostly underwater, partly underwater. You can correct me there if I'm wrong, but it takes place, like you say, about 150 years in the future.
Yeah,
it's got some interesting characters there with the genetics and everything else that's going on with the prosthetics and everything else that's going on, especially with Joe Ballen, and his love interest is a very interesting person as well. So that is kind of a neat twist in the story. Dolly is quite an interesting character. But tell us a little bit about the Joe Ballen series. And apparently, you're right now you're working on Ballen 4, and you told me that that'll be the last book in the Joe Ballen series itself. And then let us know a little bit about the Joe Ballen series.
So the Joe Ballen series, I mean, again, it was this kind of thing. I wanted to do something that was kind of real and based in reality, but futuristic. And I didn't want to do any kind of superhero or, you know, kind of like the chosen one and that kind of theme that seems to be done a lot. And I wanted this guy who was really quite ordinary in most respects. And so, like, this guy is just basically an engineer, although he works in space. And in the first book, he's actually had an accident, and he's now working on Earth driving cabs because he lost both his legs and an arm in an accident in space. He's had them regenerated, so like he's now got all his limbs again, but they're not actually very strong. He's not kind of like, you know, sort of a superhero, Superman type. He's kind of relatively weak, you know, sort of thing. And basically, the first book is all about a conspiracy to surrounding a prototype spaceship that will be able to take like people to other planets and other solar systems, and he kind of like gets dragged in a very kind of, you know, sort of classical sort of noir sense. You know, he just kind of like picks up this passenger who gets talking to the passenger, and then suddenly, oh, the passenger's been thrown off the top of a building. You know, so it was very much that. And originally, it was planned as a single book. I wasn't planning a series. And then, as I was editing the first book, it's like I suddenly started having all these ideas for like a follow-up book. So I thought, okay, well, I'll write a second book. So the second book is more kind of based in space. And again, I thought I'd only do that one book, you know, well, now two books. But then again, as I was editing it, I kind of like started having ideas for a third book. So I started writing that, and I was actually about 70,000 words into writing the third book. And then after discussions with my wife over the ending on the second book, decided to change the ending on the second book, which completely destroyed the 70,000 words that I'd written for the third book. So I had to rewrite the whole book. But it was the right decision in the end. I'm glad, you know, I was kind of like pleased that was how it went.
And you're still married?
Sorry?
You're still married?
I am, although at the end of book 4, I kind of like, when my wife read it again, it's like I swear to God, she was on the verge of divorcing me. So, yeah, but then now I'm on the verge of bringing out book 4, and it will be the last Ballen book, at least for a while, anyway.
Is it the last because of the possible divorce, or is it because of my ideas?
No, I think we've worked past the possible divorce, so it's not. I don't think that's the reason. It's just I've done a lot of them. Yeah, I mean, this is the fourth one, and they are quite difficult to write. I find them quite difficult emotionally to write as well, because they're quite tense, and there are other things I want to do. You know, other things I want to write in this kind of same universe. I need some tape for this year. But so it's like I just want to kind of like do something a little bit different and kind of like move the stories on a little bit more. So I'm kind of very near to the end of the second in the Logan series. I'll also be doing some more, as I said, on the Hyperia Jones series. But after that, there's kind of like more things that I want to do just generally.
Yeah, so I'm just going to interrupt here. We got a couple of viewers that are asking some questions here. JD Estrada, he said, David, I'm going to put his two questions together here, so maybe I think they go together almost. David, what are some tropes you enjoy flipping on their head? And then also your favorite intergalactic concept to explore. I'm not sure if you can put them two together or answer them separately, whatever, but those are interesting questions.
In terms of tropes, quite frankly, I enjoy flipping them all. It's like if I can figure a way of flipping a trope, I will flip it. The whole Joe Ballen sort of series is based around that idea. It's like, as I said, the hero is very much a very vulnerable character. He's not kind of like some Superman. The only thing he's got really is he's incredibly stubborn, and he's got a big mouth. That's it.
He's cocky. He's very cocky.
Yeah, you know, which I think he inherited from his father.
And the author.
And so, I mean, things like that, I like to change around. Like you said, the character of Dolly, it's like she's kind of like the love interest, but she's very, very much an unconventional love interest. And especially when I first started writing it, I mean, like there was no characters like that whatsoever that I kind of like was seeing, and And the whole idea of putting Dolly as she is, kind of like with Joe, to me was just kind of like a really nice kind of like, wow, that's kind of, how would you deal with that kind of, as just as a person, how would you deal with that kind of thing? And being in sort of, being infatuated or in love, whatever you want to say, with this character who is kind of like so different and so unconventional. So yeah, I mean, the same thing really with the Logan series. Logan's basically First Nations, Native American, and you don't see that many stories involving those kind of characters. And I just thought, again, it was kind of like something that was really nice to kind of like throw in and sort of like change that kind of narrative a little bit. Hyperia Jones, that kind of like just, kind of like makes fun out of everything. There's a lot of Star Wars references in there.
Oh, well, there you go. See, I'm converting you. I'm turning you over to the dark side. That's I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I wore this shirt for David. We always have a fun debate. We always have a fun debate when we get together at book shows about Star Wars, and David is not. He's more of a Star Trek fan, so I brought my buddy here today just to set you straight.
Excellent. Yes. Because I brought a buddy of my own.
Oh, no. I kind of figured you might. That's why I wanted to be prepared. That's an Imperial cruiser. See, I have to switch you over.
But I didn't finish there, you see.
Uh-oh.
Yes. That's it.
I can just predict what's about to happen right now. I want to see them on your table next book show we do together.
I'm going to sell them off for charity. They're stunning models,
So if you put them on your table and you say that.
Go ahead, Christy.
I was just going to say, if you put them on your table and you say, these are absolutely not for sale, people will be desperate to buy them for anything you ask.
Exactly, yes.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Collector's items, for sure. So you were going on about the Joe Ballen series, and Logan is a spin-off of that series.
Yeah.
So he's an Aboriginal Native American story. Now, is that something that you had in mind right from the start, or is that something where the character just kind of grew on you as you're writing the Joe Ballen series? Because Logan is mentioned in all the first all the Joe Ballen books.
Yeah, Logan is kind of like Joe's best friend. And I originally introduced him because I wanted somebody other than Joe who was kind of an engineer in space. And when I was thinking about what kind of people might do that, again, it was kind of like, part of this crazy research that sometimes you do. I was reading about how a lot of First Nations people were responsible for doing all the high-rise building projects in New York. And I just thought, like when you kind of like read some of the things that they were doing, I was thinking, what kind of people would want to sort of like work in space in this ultra dangerous, kind of like ultra risky environment? And I just remembered these characters that I'd been reading about, and I thought that would be a really good kind of character to have in the series. So I brought him in that series, and initially he was just kind of Joe's friend, and that was it. Although he does have a key part to play in several places in the book, in books, should I say? But then at the end of the third book, the third of the Joe Ballen series, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but there's this event that happens where Logan is absolutely key to this particular event, and that just kind of like started playing on my mind, and I thought, it's like I need to like do something with this character. So I kind of like originally was going to do just one spin-off with Logan, which is the book that's already been published. But again, it's like I tend to write very kind of spontaneously. So as I was kind of like working on Logan, it's like I kind of like thought, yeah, there's more to this story than there really is in this one book. And so I kind of like decided sort of relatively early on in that one that I was going to do a trilogy. So I say I'm working on the second book of that now. But I love Logan. He's very much different to Joe. He's similar in a lot of ways, but he's where Joe is kind of like really loudmouth and brash. It's like Logan's kind of like a lot quieter and his humor is very much kind of drier. He's not very. He doesn't say a lot, but when he does, it means something, kind of thing.
I find that Logan to me strikes me as a silent type of leader. Like, people respect him as a leader, what he does. Whereas Joe Ballen was kind of an anti-hero. He's like a reluctant hero. He really doesn't want to be doing what he's doing. And I know his love interest with Dolly kind of like she's the strong person in that relationship. She strong arms him. She's the boss in that relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Joe just kind of bumps around through life, probably because of what happened to him on the high rig out in space. I think he's kind of given up on everything that's going on. To me, he seemed like an anti-hero.
Yeah. I had a review from a German reader, and in the review, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it said, the hero in this book is no hero. And I just thought, yeah, that kind of says it all, really.
Mm-hmm.
He's not really a hero, isn't Joe?
No.
He's kind of, he doesn't want to be, he never kind of like wanted to be in that position. He just kind of like keeps ending up in these positions and being forced into it, and then he reacts to that.
Speaking of heroes, and just to jump back into our debate that we always have going on, all the Star Wars movies, this guy is the true hero. Without him, nothing would have ever happened. This is actually a 1977 collectible. He makes a little beep beep sounds with a spin of his head. But
I always thought it was a garbage can myself.
He is but that's when his career went down the tubes. He turned into a garbage can. But when he was in his prime, he was a major motion picture star. Yes.
So, David, in terms of getting back to some of like the science research you do, when you're writing, because of course this is also fiction and it's meant to be enjoyable, but of course, as you said, you have to do so much research and integrate it in a way that sort of works toward the enjoyment of the story, but also makes it real. Is there any such thing as being too nitpicky? Like when you're writing it, when you're inserting all these details, have you ever gotten caught up in research trying to make something like dead on or believable or something, and then said, it doesn't matter. Like it just doesn't matter. Nobody's even going to know, or anything like that?
Yeah, I've done that. In fact, I do that quite a bit. Actually, I get caught up in the research and I'll kind of like, I'll start writing. Sometimes I'll start writing a lot of it into the book. And then usually when I'm kind of like in the editing process, I'll just kind of trim a lot of that back because it's not really necessary. It's like at the end of the day, I believe in, kind of like having a good story. And, you don't want sort of, kind of crazy detail to get sort of like in the way of that story, and developing the characters. So I'll basically I'll usually, when I'm kind of like doing a first edit, I'll probably sort of like kind of tend to throw sort of everything in, and then I tend to kind of like cut it back and very much minimize things so that there may be still little elements of that in there, but they're not kind of like so big that they're distracting from the main story and the main kind of like development that's going on. Oops, excuse me. Yeah, but I mean, I definitely kind of have a tendency to do that. Sometimes my wife, when she reads something, she'll kind of like go, I didn't understand the word of that. So, you might want to look at it again. And, so I usually do. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, because I mean, I just love all this kind of geeky stuff, I mean, it's like, I just kind of like read it just for fun because I enjoy it. But, it's different when, you have to kind of bear in mind what the reader is going to enjoy kind of like reading. That's the main thing. I read something in a book by James Scott Bell, who does a lot of books on the craft of writing, and he came up with something which I kind of grabbed hold of, and I thought that was a really good piece of advice. He said, don't bother telling the reader anything that they don't need to know, and don't tell them it before they need to know it, and I tried to follow that advice,
Yeah, for sure. So, going on advice in that, I know your wife Hilary, she's your biggest supporter. How much influence does she have in your books? I know she's probably your first reader, and she's probably one of your last readers before you go to publication, if I'm not mistaken. How much influence does she have? I know you told us about the influence she had on telling you that that 70,000 words that you wrote. Oh no, it was the ending of book 2 she didn't like, so you had to change 7,000 words in book 3. But other than that, what kind of influence does she have? Is it editing influence? She works in a library. Does that seem to help out the relationship between you two professionally?
She's very, very important. She's very critical. She as I said, she changed the ending of the second book quite dramatically. She, as I said, she had a very bad reaction to the ending of the fourth book as well. So I've actually slightly changed the ending with that. She's got a very, very good instinct for the sort of mechanics of what a story should be and what makes it satisfying to a reader. She reads a lot just in herself, not particularly science fiction, but she reads a lot just generally, sort of thing. And as I say, she's got a very good instinct, and it's like sometimes I think, certainly me as an author, maybe other people, I don't know, but we sort of like tend to get a little bit kind of obsessive in terms of what we think is right, and we don't necessarily always kind of like see things in a sort of broader context of what sort of like a reader may necessarily kind of see. And so she's kind of like a really good sort of reality check in terms of what kind of like a reader might expect and what might, what they don't expect, sort of thing. So yeah, she's absolutely invaluable. The fact that she's a librarian, it certainly helps because, I mean, she's very, very familiar with books. She's very familiar with bookish things in general. Her spelling is much, much better than mine.
Thank God for Microsoft Word spell check.
Yeah.
As CJ's mentioning, it's great you both work so well together to get the best of your books out there. And
yeah, it is very much a partnership for sure.
I think Margaret Bernard's asking if Hilary is a Taurus.
A tourist? No,
Tourist,
she
no,
lives
that's
here.
tourist.
I couldn't tell you because I couldn't tell you what a Taurus is actually. Sorry.
I think that's May to June, I believe. Yeah, I'm not. I know who I am, but my sister, I think, is a Taurus. So that's the only
April
reason.
is
It's May,
included.
June.
April.
No, she's not.
Oh, April to May, right?
Yeah.
Is
Right.
that Taurus?
Pisces, Aries, Taurus. I know those. Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
No, she's not.
So, David, is there anything in sci-fi in general, not necessarily in your books? Obviously, you're going to write what you think is entertaining, both for yourself and for your readers. But like in other sci-fi books that you've read, is there anything you're kind of like sick of seeing in any way? Is there anything you're kind of like, no more, stop, don't do this anymore, it's overdone, or anything like that?
I'm kind of sick of superheroes. I mean, I don't particularly consider superhero stuff science fiction anyway, even though it seems to get jammed in there nowadays. But I'm kind of sort of sick of that. I mean, it's like, we've had so many of them now. It's like, yeah, please, it's like, oh, it's another person who's been bitten by a radioactive canary or something, it's like, who cares, and the whole kind of, I think the whole kind of chosen one idea is kind of like very, very much overdone these days. Again, it's my personal preference, but it's like I prefer stories about people who are just kind of like ordinary people who would then get put into kind of like very unusual circumstances. I think that's kind of far more interesting than having somebody who's kind of like some kind of like weird sort of like, oh well, I'm a god in reality and all this kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of, because of the strength of a lot of the kind of major franchises that we have, I think there's a lot of stories which just kind of like really are just very generic kind of copies of those kind of big franchises. So yeah, I mean, I kind of almost wish all of those big franchise things would just kind of like go away and do something else, quite honestly. I mean, you see so many books which are basically just kind of, clones of Star Wars, clones of Star Trek, Terminator clones, Predator clones. It's like, all of those kind of franchises all kind of came originally from people taking risks. And now people are just copying them and they're not taking risks. And that to me, I think is really quite sad and disappointing. It's like, we should all be trying to find our own stories and not just trying to copy other people's.
I couldn't agree with you more. I so agree with you. What a great point. Exactly. I definitely also want to hear more news stories and the idea, like different takes and stuff. And, the idea with Joe Ballen that he is not perfect and he doesn't have an easy time. And he didn't have, of course, when you hear he regenerates, any part of his body, you would assume naturally, because that's the cliche, that it would be better than the last one, or it would be the same, or something like that. And the fact that it's actually a weakness, I love that automatically. It's something different, and I like that a lot.
It certainly allows the reader to cheer for the underdog, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Margaret Bernard's got a good idea for your next book, Dave. Maybe put this in the Hyperia Jones category of a radioactive. I can't even say that word. It's got more than 3 syllables. But the radioactive canary superhero would have to save someone in the Yorkshire mine.
Yeah, it would.
You must.
You can run that by Hilary first before you start that, I think. And J.D. Estrada saying, I think that's a reflection of the top 40 in the pop music when you were talking about all these clone movies that we see from Marvel and all those other ones. They're great. The first 50 of them were great, but after that, they just seem to be the same movie again and again and again. It's just different special effects in the background.
Yeah, and some of them, I mean, literally, they just make the same movie. It's like, I mean, how many times have we seen, like, you know, the birth of Batman?
The Spider-Man.
How many times have we seen Spider-Man? You know,
but it's not this. It's not like a continuation of the Spider-Man story. It's the same story all over again. Like we keep seeing this guy get bit by a radioactive spider. I wonder how he got his powers. Oh yeah, he got bitten by a spider.
Yeah.
Like, every movie. Like, come on, we know that. We knew that 100 years ago or 50 years ago, whenever it came out. Like,
and it's like, how many times does Uncle Ben have to die?
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
I know.
Sure. But it's selling, so obviously people like it. But
it's so strange. Like, it's so strange because obviously the comic series, there are multiple comic series of Spider-Man, and it, you know, even the originals and stuff go on for such a long time with very, very different issues and villains and all kinds of stuff, and yet we stick to this teeny little piece of the story and never move on. I mean, how cool would it be if they would at least move on to something else that exists in that whole long story, and yet we have the same thing over and over, just with different actors, and that really irritates me as a Spider-Man fan.
That sells, though, right? And that irritates me too. I totally agree with both of you. But it sells every time they put it out. It sells. So
I don't know why.
I don't either. They're not going to mess with it. As long as they keep selling, they're going to keep doing it. So we're going to have to start boycotting these things so we can get something fresh out there.
Yeah, I mean, they just will not take any risk as long as those things keep selling. People keep going to see them. You know, people going, Palooza. Yeah, quite.
That's exactly right, JD. Dead right.
As long as people keep buying them, going to see them, etc., they'll just keep making them because it's easy money for them. You know.
Well, maybe that's what we should be doing then. I should be writing The Sword of Shannara again, and you should be writing Star Wars again.
Yeah.
A New Hope. A New Hopeless. You can write that one.
I think I've already wrote that one.
I'm just reading. Sorry, I should. Yeah, there.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up Margaret's. Margaret says, to be fair, the Spider-Verse movie was hella innovative. Jason Reynolds ripped it up. Not sure which. I'll have to look that up.
I don't even watch them, so I have no idea who that is.
I saw the Spider-Verse one, and actually that was like very good. They kind of like had all these different Spider-Men from different and not only Spider-Man. There's also, was it Gwen Stacy? She was Spider-Girl. I don't know, but they had all of these from different kind of like the different sort of like Marvel universes, the different variations of Spider-Man, and that was actually like one of the most kind of like entertaining ones of those I've seen like in years. You know, it was like actually very well done, even though it was, you know, it was an animation kind of thing. It wasn't live action or anything like that. But it was like really well done, and the stories and the storylines that they included were like really quite good. And there was some really strange ones. There was like I don't know, because I don't know all of the different sort of like timelines. Spider-Gwen, yeah, thanks, JD. And there was also one was Spider-Pig or something. It was kind of like Porky Pig in a Spider-Man unit outfit, and it was kind of like, what?
I don't even like spiders.
You know, and it was like, but it was kind of like, yeah, wow, this is a bit different. You know, they're doing something with it. You know,
that I don't have a problem with. It's just when they retell the same thing over and over and over again. That's what I have the problem with. But yeah, that sounds fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, for sure. Margaret Bernard mentions the movies that pull me in on the franchises are because they're funny. And I had a discussion. I'm not sure who I was talking to a little while ago about the Star Trek franchises, and not the original Star Trek series, but when they came out with the movies. And someone said, "Oh, it was actually Tim Connolly." I had him on one of my libraries on a Friday night, and he was telling me that Wrath of Khan is his favorite Star Trek movie. And I thought about it, and I'm thinking my favorite Star Trek movie, bar none, is Star Trek IV. The Voyage Home, just because of the humor that they put into that movie. They make Spock swear, and it's not the swearing, but it's because of the characters actually doing it that makes it funny. And Chekhov, when he gets caught at the naval base, and all the little humor that they put in that movie, I thought it was great.
Yeah, those kinds of things are great. The Star Trek movies, they do different things, and I like that a lot too.
Yeah, they certainly do some, and some fall in the face, and some are great. So
it is kind of like that's right. That's very true. That's very
Yeah,
true.
and the whales. Yeah, there be whales here. I can't sound like Scotty at all. I'll have to get Caroline to come in here and do that for us. So I'm just conscious of the time, Dave. Thank you for being with us this week, and we'd love to have you back on again. We're now booking into January next year. If you've got a new release coming up sometime next year and you want to get back in here, just look us up and we'll get you back in. We'll talk about your new release. Thank you for coming on. So just before we leave you, though, one, where can we find your books? And two, what is the next book that's coming out? Is it the Joe Ballen 4 or is it the Logan 2?
It'll be Joe Ballen 4 will be the next one. That should be coming out in probably about 6 weeks, something like that.
Awesome. So there's no firm date yet?
Say? No.
You don't have a firm date yet for it?
No, I avoid firm dates like a plague.
But if you're signed up to David's newsletter, I believe that the cover was released, right?
Yes. Yeah,
I believe I saw that.
Yeah, I announced the cover of my last newsletter at the weekend. But yeah, that will be the next one. It'll be about, as I said, next 6 weeks or so, I'm guessing. And then Logan will be later on in this year, I believe. Depends how it goes.
It depends on whether your biggest critic finds fault with the series.
Yeah, sure. It depends if I have to rewrite the whole thing.
So where can we find your books if we're looking for them?
You can find them on all sort of the major book retailers. You can find them there. If you want kind of like more direct contact, you can go to my website, davidmkelly.net, and you can find out all the information about all the books, see the book trailers there, etc., etc.
Awesome. How about you, Christy? Do you got something coming up in the next little while?
I do. I finally have something to say at the end of one of these. So this Friday, actually, May 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to be doing another Writer's Showcase interview, which I do every other month now. And this one's going to be with Chris Humphreys. He's also known as CC Humphreys. And he's also an actor. He's been in a number of TV shows and things like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk to him. He writes historical fiction and fantasy, and he, I think, recently wrote a book that sort of plays off some 40s noir style movies, and I love those. So I'm really excited to talk to him. Just make sure you go to Facebook and Writer Showcase, and that page is where the live stream will be. It's already pinned to the top, so I hope you can join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's what's coming up for me. How about you, Richard? Yeah,
I'll pop in there. I've got a live read again coming up on Friday. I've actually got a guest coming on, a local author here in Cambridge, Tara Shipley. I'll never say her name right. Tara Shipley Mondu. And so we're going to be live reading from her book, and then live reading from Keeper the Jewel, which is going to be releasing on June 15th. So I'm quite excited about that. And that's what's new with me going right now. I'm in the process of editing a 600-page manuscript. So that's fulfilling my days, and it'll do that for the next couple of weeks. That's all I'm gonna do is sit on my couch and read.
Not long enough, Richard.
Read. And yeah, well, you know what? Dragon Sect is supposed to, I wanted to be shorter, but it might be even longer. So we'll see. I gotta stop this because it's cutting into my releases. I tried to release 3 books a year, and this might turn it down to 2, but we'll see. So anyway, next week's guest will be Canadian author Con Lavery, writer of dark fantasy, horror, and thrillers. And Con is also a graphic designer by trade. That's to be a good episode speaking to him about his. He
waited until he looked away. It was very clever.
So until then, Chris and I hope everyone has an amazing week. We hope you all stay safe. And we wish that you all take care. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.